The following is a hockey podcast out of Vancouver and Surrey, British Columbia. It'll only consist of a lot of puck talk and even more BS, or in actual words, banter and satire. Enjoy, and as always, go Canucks go.
Rick Tocchet does not give a shit about the Jack Adams, okay? It's all about the Stanley Cup and breaking jaws, or playing through broken jaws. What? Yeah.
You're Locked On Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, how's it going? Happy Monday, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canucks. My name is Trevor Beggs, co-host of Locked On Canucks, and also a Canucks Raider since way back in 2013. Before we dive into the episode, we got to thank you for tuning into Locked On Canucks, because guess what? It is your Canucks every damn day, part of that Locked On Podcast Network. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you go subscribe, like, follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, okay? Hey, we're not making that Zadorov and Linholm money, but we are making some money because we have sponsors, okay? And today, the episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Let's go, baby. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Now, on this episode of Locked On Canucks, we got to talk about a couple of things, okay? We've been doing lots of Zadorov and Lindholm updates. We got another one for you on today's episode. Also, Rick Tocchet speaking on the podcast with Darren Millard about a number of things Vancouver Canucks, including the fact that the coach of the year needs to be better. How can he be better? Well, I think we know he could lead this team to a Stanley Cup. So let's talk about some potential changes that Rick Tocchet might make next season in terms of, bringing fresh ideas to the organization. And then, hey, the last stand on Linholm and Zadorov. Where's that all at? We'll get into it. Before we do that, let me introduce my co-host. He has not signed an extension yet with Locked On Canucks, so there's some drama there. Kyle, what's going on, buddy?
Who knows what's going to happen in September, man? You gotta wait and see, man. Big news coming. Anyways, Kyle Bound, Trevor Beggs, Locked On Canucks, one love to the Don't Doze Art Lab for giving us the space to give you this show. Beggs, he brought up the whole Zadorov and Lindholm update. Man, oh man, another name to add to that list is Dakota Joshua, because by the sounds of it, this guy is definitely testing free agency, okay? I feel as if he is drooling to understand what type of money is going to be coming his way. For real. Anyways, let's talk about Rick Tocchet. A big fan of Dakota Joshua, obviously. A big fan of Lindholm and Zadorov, obviously. And just a big fan of getting better, evolving, adapting. A big fan of the game. What a hockey nerd, okay? We'll put the link in the bio below. He just got interviewed by Darren Millard, the legend, via the NHL Network. Again, link in the bio to listen to it. And so much was going on, okay? And we could start in so many places, but I want to start in one place in particular because I feel as if, again, it ties into him being such a hockey nerd and such a champion. So Darren Millard asked him about a story that he could tell his players to motivate them, right? And talk it off the jump. A humble dude immediately says that he doesn't like doing that. It's not one of the things he likes to do. He doesn't want to talk too much about himself and his past. He just wants to focus on the players. That being said, he did tell a story to us, and he talked about how there was one game, I believe in Pittsburgh, where he broke his jaw. I think it was a shot block, or I think Mario Lemieux dumped it in, hit him in the face, broken jaw. And what did he do? He demanded that the trainers let him continue to play in the game. And what did Tocchet do? He scored the game-winning goal in that same game. Now, it was interesting to me because I feel as if this answer was a bit premeditated. I don't know if he's always connecting all of his conversations about the game with the team he coaches, the Vancouver Canucks. But for some reason, my mind was connecting the conversation that he was having with Millard and that story in general with playing injured. And again, my mind was connecting it with Pettersson and him trying to motivate not just Pettersson, but the whole team that there are levels to this to be a champion. And then he ended off his story with talking about how you need to have somewhat of a Navy SEAL type of mindset because mentally you kind of let the injury win sometimes. And the playoffs, the attrition, the nutrition, the being injured in general, it's going to be a thing. but can you mentally overcome every single challenge that comes your way? And that's what really takes one team from the second round to the third round. Sorry, there's something going on the roof. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah, for
Anyways,
those who don't know, Kyle's got a big fear of mice, so
yeah,
your reaction made sense.
that was nuts. Anyways, Trevor, again, Tocchet, a hockey nerd, a champion, bringing up playing with a broken jaw, doing whatever it takes. The answer kind of stuck out.
And it's interesting that he referenced that because, when with all this talk about Tocchet maybe needed to change things up and get better. And I know he talked about that a bit on the podcast as well. When I hear him bring up stuff like that, and I know he was prompted by the question from Darren Millard, it makes me wonder if even Tocchet's thinking, what else can I really do to get the most out of this team? And maybe he truly believes that the way to get the most out of this team is some tweaks to the structure. It's the motivational mindset, right? And I think he might be onto something because, a guy can only play so hard when he's hurt. But that being said, you got to think that there's another level to Pettersson, even if he's not 100% healthy. You got to think like a guy like Ilya Mikheyev, if he does stick around, there's another level to his game. So I do wonder if the motivational aspect is really where he thinks that he could just be a better motivator in terms of getting this team better. Because a lot of the time, and for those who played at sports, I mean, there's certainly, or ice hockey in particular, maybe even ball hockey, there's certainly a part of it that's X's and O's, but a big part of it is just the motivation, the confidence, the juice, the mojo to be that you can be. And, Pettersson, again, the most important player on this team, was kind of lacking that. I would say Hughes maybe lacking that a little bit.
True.
The floor was there with Hughes throughout the playoffs, but you think there's probably another layer to his game, at least offensively as well, like that creativity. Space is harder to find in the playoffs. And, I think if the Canucks are going to win a cup, they're going to need some monster performances from Pettersson and Hughes. And how is it not hard? How is it? It's impossible as a Canuck fan not to look at the finals right now. And even though Edmonton's obviously down in the series, it's like their stars were better than our stars. And that is the primary reason why they won that series, right? So I think Hughes and Pettersson, hopefully they understand that now. But I bet Tocchet's trying to find interesting and creative ways to motivate those guys, man.
Yeah. No, again, we brought up the whole Pettersson thing, I think a couple weeks ago, in regards to understanding that tendonitis and his injury was a real thing, but the only reason the team kept him in there was because they know that there's much worse than tendonitis. And if you want to get through, you have to get over those mental hurdles. Again, listen to the interview. Really interesting to hear him talk about the whole Navy SEAL thing at the end of his little spiel. It's really that mental warfare that you're having with yourself that you need to, A, overcome so you can be the best version of yourself, because B, your opponent, chances are they're doing that. And if they're doing that and you're not doing that, and if you're just succumbing to your injuries, you're going to lose. It's all mind games, man. So maybe Tocchet has to give that lesson to the team, or again, that lesson was learned based on the experience that the Canucks just had by going to game 7 of round 2 of the playoffs, right? It's one of those things. It's one of those things. Now, speaking of experience, Millard asked him, right? How much did that play a toll in, again, the outcome for the Vancouver Canucks? And Rick Tocchet, somewhat had a tough time answering that question, because he does bring up, the power player, the first period, and the Mikheyev miss, and all this jazz, right? He seems like an accountable guy. Just wants to blame the moment and not, again, the lack of playoff experience that this team has. That being said, Rick Tocchet also referenced that they're questioning what they got to do better next season. And a lot of that has to do with, again, opening up, scoring more goals. This team in the second half of the season was not scoring a lot of goals. In the playoffs, they were one of the worst shooting teams in the league, almost in NHL history, when it comes to how much shots on goals they were generating. Or shots on goal, my bad. So I'm curious to see what Tocchet and company do going into training camp to keep things fresh. And a part of me believes that there's going to be a notion that, they got to be defensively strong and structured, and those things generate success. I mean, look at Florida, Edmonton, Dallas. Like, those teams have it too. You got to be structured. You got to know how to play defense. But I think there definitely is going to be an emphasis on generating more off the rush. And that's where the challenge lies for Rick Tocchet. Again, great coach of the year, but there definitely is a gap that he needs to fill, because what we saw in the second half of this season ultimately ruined us in the NHL playoffs.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, again, this team defensively got better throughout the year, but offensively they got worse, right?
Mhm.
And, for all the jokes we made about the PDO trade and F that PDO, I mean, it did kind of come out, bite the Canucks in the rear end. And Kyle,
Yeah.
how often do we say, shout out to the everydayers, they know this, but, I talked about probably the midway point of the season that this team needs to do a better job of creating their own luck. And you know what they did? They didn't create their own luck and they got burned for it, okay? So, Kyle, here's what I want you to do. We're going to stop here. Just shout out a sponsor, and on the other side, I want you and I to each give a fresh idea about
Okay,
how the
cool.
Canucks can boost their offense next season, how Tocchet can help this team win a Stanley Cup. Let's go. We're going to get to that, but before we do that, we got to shout out our friends over at Policygenius, baby. All right, life is unpredictable, okay? And I want to make sure that my life gets a big fat $1 million paycheck when she decides to off me. I mean, when I pass away.
Whoa.
So because, after I leave this beautiful earth, my family's going to be protected because of Policygenius. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options are 100% online, and that means you can avoid unnecessary medical exams because no one wants a Q-tip up the. Okay, let's not go there. Policygenius, they help you easily compare options from America's top insurers in just a few clicks, and their award-winning agents can walk through the process step by step. Policygenius, you can trust them because they have no incentive to recommend one insurer over the other. You can trust their guidance. They got your back. Don't believe me? Well, guess what? They got thousands of five-star reviews from Google and Trustpilot from customers who found the best fit for their needs, baby. So get the peace of mind right away by finding the right life insurance with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com or click the link in the description below to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com.
People, we back doing this, and that's talking about your Vancouver Canucks here on Locked On Canucks. My name is Kyle Bowen, and that guy right there is called Big Daddy Begsy, okay? This guy was cooking burgers for his son's first birthday party with his son in his hands, okay? The son had the smoke coming in the face and everything. He was just embracing it. Begsy was making him tough. Begsy was living the dream. I swear to you, I feel as if you had that visualization, again, of you grilling with your son in your hands. All of that was happening, and while that was happening, man, oh man, I had a conversation with your dad, man. Your dad, a big time Canucks fan, and your dad emphasizing this, okay? Straight up. And Rick Tocchet, he touched on the whole, having to go to 3 goaltenders and how it could have been stressful, but because of Alvin and Rutherford and Rick Tocchet, they didn't allow that to happen, right? They totally believe in the next man up ability. Think about who they won the cup with way back when. No Letang, no Murray in net out of nowhere, right? They understand that's part of the game. All that being said, just like Kurt Richardson is saying in the comments, my bad, your dad is saying the same thing, right? Demko not playing was the primary reason we did not beat the Oilers. Not Pettersson not being able to get through his tendonitis and just not being as fluid and all that jazz. It was clear as day that Demko could have helped us get past the Oilers. And the more and more I think about it, because I wasn't on this wagon 3 or 4 weeks ago, and maybe I'm doing too much reflecting, but man, oh man, I'm going to say it right now. If Demko is healthy, we're beating the Oilers.
Yeah, I didn't want to sound like a butthurt Canucks fan, but I have on a number of occasions because I believe I've said that on this show, and I said that on the Locked On NHL podcast as well when I was asked by Locked On Alice Gil Martin. So, yeah, call me a butthurt Canucks fan. I don't really care. I firmly believe that the Canucks are beating the Edmonton Oilers with Thatcher Demko and net.
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. And maybe, just maybe, we could still have beaten them with Sheloffs if there was more creativity with the Vancouver Canucks. And Kurt, man, always bringing it up with the logical comments, okay? This guy's one of the most realistic fans of Locked On Canucks, okay? Hit the like button on this video for Kurt, real talk, okay? He's talking about offense being more creative than anything, okay? But, it's smart to get the defensive structure down first. Speaking of getting it down first, look at where the Canucks were 14 or 15 months ago, right? This kind of has to happen before the next phase happens. And what the next phase is again, Tocchet going into September, trusting that this team will carry over all the lessons that they learned over the last 14 or 15 months with structure, coming back, being able to be 3-way players, right? Being good in all zones. and leaning on that so that he can then teach or just implement more freedom on the ice, because it was quite clear, especially in game 7, that he did not trust that. Case in point, when Brock Besser goes down and you need somebody in your top 6 to somewhat replace him, what does Rick Tocchet do? He promotes Ilya Mikheyev from the press box to the top line to play with Brock Besser. JT Miller and Elias Patterson. That's embarrassing. That was a dumb decision. You want to talk about us not having Demko and us losing? Yo, I'm telling you, a small reason, but maybe a big reason why we lost game 7 was because of that decision to put Mikheyev up with Miller and Patterson when this guy was a healthy scratch and had 1 goal in his last 746 games.
Yeah, and it did feel like desperate times, right? With the Besser injury.
Yeah.
You put Mikheyev and Lafferty in after they were both healthy scratches, and Lafferty had 7 minutes in that game, and he was on the ice for a goal against, and Mikheyev misses a glorious chance. I mean,
yeah. Where's Höglander? Where's Höglander? But again, Rick Tocchet not leaning into opening it up, not going into that style of play, just trusting that he needs defense first. And if you look back at that first period, the Canucks all period long, they just played dump and chase. Dump and chase, dump and chase. And I feel as if that's eating away at Rick Tocchet going into this offseason.
Yeah, and let's and I go one left to all our commenters, one left to Kurt for leaving the comment there. But I think there's two sides to that, right?
Yeah.
Offense for the most part is creativity. I do agree with that, right? I mean, that's why these guys get to the level they're at, because they've been the top player on their teams for a long, long time because of that offensive creativity. Now, I do think there's the interesting thing about that is I think the Canucks, in some ways, play too much dump and chase. They're not trying to carry the puck with possession. They're trying not to be creative. But once the puck's actually in the zone, sometimes I feel like they're being too creative. They're trying too hard to look for the perfect play. They're trying too hard to look for the perfect pass, the perfect shot. And because of that, they don't get the puck on net enough. It gets broken up. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why they were one of the lowest shooting teams in the NHL this season, but especially in the second half and especially in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. So I do think there's an element of put the puck on net and see what happens, right? I mean, I think the Canucks just didn't do that enough in the playoffs. Of course. Saying it throughout the playoffs that 12 shots on goal, 18 shots on goal, 20 shots on goal, just throw the damn puck on net, especially when Saros wasn't doing well, especially when Skinner looked like an absolute sieve out there. And the Canucks game 6 against the Oilers had 20 shots, less than that, 15 shots or whatever it was. Yeah. Again, I think that it's twofold. I do think that they probably need to maybe not dump and chase as much, depending on what they do in the offseason, depending what their personnel looks like. But also when the puck's in the zone, just get the puck on net. And I think that's they got too cute with. It was almost like they were too cocky. They were trying to be too creative.
Yeah.
So they're ironically enough, there's elements of the game where I think they can be more creative, and there's elements of the game where I think they just need to be a bit more simple to get pucks on net. And they didn't adjust to the playoffs, which was frustrating.
And there's also an element of just not having the right tools in the toolkit, right? To put together a creative top 6, because nothing against Pius Suter, right? But we saw a lot of Pius Suter in the playoffs in the top 6. We saw a lot of Ilya Mikheyev in the top 6, right? It just you're trying to get to the mountaintop, right? And it's borderline impossible for that to happen if those guys are staples. We barely saw Höglander up there. And I know he struggled as well, but I feel as if, again, there was no trust. There was no trust. And this stickiness to just only trust or put Mikheyev up there just because he's not going to be a liability defensively was, again, just, in my opinion, backwards, man. It really was. That being said, what happens here? What happens? How does Tocchet, quote unquote, open up the system more? Is it as simple as implementing it, teaching it? Because I feel as if that's a small part of the equation. The biggest part is player acquisition, right? It's the truth.
Yeah, I do think there's something to be said about working on their zone injuries, right? You look about how the Canucks enter right now. Again, it's a lot of it's dump and chase, and there's different things you can do. Like wingers and centers can crisscross. You can kind of do J hooks and things like that. Enter the zone a bit differently, because I feel like there's too much dump and chase right now. So I think that is a big part of it. And to me, it does come down to personnel. If you're a bigger, heavier team, I think throwing the puck on net and just having bodies crash the crease is a solid way to go. If your team is maybe more speed and skill, then you focus on just kind of carrying it in and being a bit more creative. So
No, that's
Yeah, I don't
true.
know. Those are kind of the two fixes that I think of for this team right now. Kyle, I don't know if you have another
Again, it's just
idea about how this team could be better heading into next
it's
season.
I think for me personally, it has a lot to do with player personnel and also just again getting faster in general. Those two things will allow them to be more fluid, especially on the rush. That being said, I talked about this already 2 times on the segment, right? It's just the mentality change of like not overly trusting plugs in the top 6 just because they're good at playing defense. You know what I'm saying? Like, like trust that Miller and Pedersen are going to do a bunch of back checking and just give them Höglander. Or just anyone but Mikheyev. Because look what PDG did in the second half of that game, right? Was a lot better on that line. Just little things like that. I guess what I got to say is don't play Ilya Mikheyev a lot in your top 6. All in all, though, can we touch back on this point? Okay, so again, off the top, again, Rick Tocchet tells the story that he may use to motivate the players if he were ever to use that card, something that he may not actually do because he feels as if he doesn't want to talk about himself too much, right? But he brings up the whole ability to not only play through injury, but still bring it at the top of your game, and how the little things like that being brought upon the top players of your team can ultimately help you win games, especially when the line is so thin. And then you bring up the whole Archer Shilov's coming in for Casey DeSmith and how there's no panic in the top of that organization from Tocchet, Albion, and Rutherford. Okay, it's next man up. Like those 2 stories for me give me so much faith in the future of the Vancouver Canucks because that's some real championship energy. You know what I'm saying? And this is just the start. I know it hurts. We're just rehashing a whole bunch of Game 7 review. Like you can tell this is still so like I wouldn't say fresh, but like I feel as if you can break down that whole game still, you know? It still hurts like it does for Tocchet. But again, just seeing or hearing the energy within that organization and how they move and how they moved in the past and how they want to continue to move in the future gives me the most hope that no matter what happens and who stays and who goes, and we'll talk more about that in a couple minutes, the Vancouver Canucks, they're contenders going into next season.
Yeah, they are contenders. And this is a segue to cutting to break here because we got to shout out our friends over at FanDuel. And Kyle, I pulled this up, but I have the Stanley Cup odds according to FanDuel for 2024-2025. So let's get into it as we shout out FanDuel. We'll wrap up the episode with the Zadorov and Lindholm updates. As you can tell, they're not the most shocking updates, hence why they're in segment 3. And we'll get some of your comments as well. Again, you're listening to Locked On Canucks, your Canucks every day. Let's shout out our friends over at FanDuel. All right, it's that time of year, baby, okay? You know, there's champions in the NBA and the NHL, and guess what? You can bet on it all on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 to bet you can use to bet on everything from the Finals MVP to Stanley Cup winner to who's going to hit one out of the park if you're into Major League Baseball. Now, Kyle, this rattle me even more, man. FanDuel. Again, I like to think of it positively, but I also, as a Canucks fan, it bugged me to see this. But on FanDuel right now, you can bet on the Stanley Cup winner for 2024-2025. Kyle, my reaction, I'm going to give it away, but where do you think the Canucks rank in terms of where they are on the list of favorites heading into the 2024-2025 season, according to
Probably
FanDuel?
like 16, 17, 18.
Wow.
Yeah.
Even that's even more. They're 13th. I didn't think you'd go that low.
Fair enough.
They were one of the best teams in the league last season. They were the 5th last team left in the dance. You thought they could be 16th? Unbelievable.
No, I don't think that. But you know, like FanDuel may, you know, because they weren't really favoring the Canucks the whole way through. You know.
Man, oh man. So some of the teams ahead of them, I mean, you have the favorites like Florida, Carolina, Colorado, Dallas, Edmonton, Vegas, the Rangers. You also have the Devils, the Maple Leafs, the Tampa Bay Lightning, the LA Kings, and the Winnipeg Jets. All with better odds of winning the Stanley Cup in 2024-2025 than the Vancouver Canucks. So FanDuel, as much as you're boiling my blood with this, you know, I think FanDuel's just trying to help you out. So if you want to place a bet on the Canucks Cup odds for next season or anything else, make sure you go place a bet on FanDuel. They are America's #1 sportsbook. Make sure you visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and add a big win to your summer bucket list.
Man, we're going to have a lot of fun tonight in Vancouver, all my real fans.
People, we back doing this, giving you some Canucks conversation in the summer. Hey, we here every day, no matter what, man. There's always something to talk about with your team. Begsy Bowen doing this at the Don't Doze Art Lab. Hey, speaking of the Don't Doze Art Lab, we take care of that West Coast bias. Go check out don'tdoze.com, okay? DONTDOZE.com. And again, you want to talk about the West Coast bias? It's all there. Again, on don'tdoze.com. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. What's up?
I got a funny story for you. So I was wearing the Don't Doze shirt yesterday in the car, and my daughter Everly was asking about like what the logo was. I'm like, oh, this is the Don't Doze Art Lab. And I was explaining like what it was, and then she's just like, "Mommy, don't doze." And she kept saying, "Don't doze" in the back seat. I wish if I wasn't driving, I would have taken a video for you, but it was pretty cute.
There you go, man. Hey, man. Speaking of your family, man. Okay, so again, Trevor family, first birthday for her Trevor's son, right? Good vibes, such beautiful vibes. Like I'm having the time of my life. I'm just like every kid is so well behaved. It's just like a jolly old time, right? Not gonna lie, man. I went home and threw away all my condoms, man.
Damn, I hope your girl's not listening to this. Yeah, it was a great time.
It was, man. That's how beautiful it was, man. You, again, I'm 31 and a half years old, and this is the first time in my life where, again, I'm years and years and years away from actually doing this, but I'm just
You just threw the condoms. What are you talking about?
I'm just entering, bro, Jenga, okay? Professional Jenga player. Okay, so I'm just entering that phase where I'm like, I love kids, man. I love babies, man. So cute, full of life. That is what life's all about. Like Stanley Cups and babies. Straight up.
Yeah. I want to be in that Canucks locker room and put my kid in the cup. That's for sure. But you know what? I don't know. Shout out to Kurt shouting out my son's first birthday in the comments, but I don't think the most listeners care about my son's first birthday party. Kyle, let's hear the updates on Linholm and Zadorov. And enough about me throwing away my condoms.
Okay, so updates, right? Updates on Zadorov, Lindholm, and Joshua. According to Elliot Friedman, I believe he talked about this on 32 Thoughts, the Merrick Show. He also went on to Donnie and Daly as well today. Listen to that interview as well. Donnie and Daly, probably the funniest podcast ever. Anyways, it's not looking good if you are glued to wanting two of those guys coming back. It's not even looking good if you want one of those guys coming back. By the sounds of it, all these guys are going to test the market. And it's ironic because on Friday, we're bringing up the whole Zadorov thing. Apparently, there's a last push that was going to be made this weekend. And fast forward to Monday, and Elliot Friedman is, assuming a lot. He's a professional assumer, but the tone and what he was saying exactly was telling everyone in Vancouver that, this is not going to happen. Like, never say never, but this is not going to happen. Like, Zadorov is going to test free agency. Like, these guys are going to get to July 1st.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a huge surprise to any of us based on what we know they could command on the open market, what we've kind of heard in terms of rumblings about them wanting to stay and whatnot. I mean, look, Zadorov apparently wants to stay. Apparently guys went to Lindholm and said, please stay. This is a place to win. And, these guys want to chase the money. Mm-hmm. And they're both going to get paid huge contracts that they're not going to get in Vancouver. So, it's easy for us to say like, oh yeah, just like take $1 million less this season. Like you're already making $50 million. Why need to make $55 million? That's fair. But if you're in those shoes, are you taking the extra $5 million, the extra $7 million to play hockey, to play a sport you love? Probably. Like I think more about. I'll tell you this, guy. Like I've been kind of like a F the money kind of person. Like just live your life, and I am like that to an extent. But once you have a family, you want to do your best to set them up for their future too. And Zadorov has kids. Linholm, I think, is expecting his first child, I believe. It does change your mindset a bit once you have a family in terms of wanting to set them up for the future.
100%.
So, I'm not gonna crap on these guys for wanting to chase the bag. But if they want to chase the bag, they're not coming back to the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah, look at Trevor Beggs, man. In the financial world, works in the financial world. Now he's just like, oh yeah, you got to think about these millionaires needing more millions to set up their family down the road. Dude, shut up, okay? At the end of the day, I think players just want to. They just want. Maybe it's okay. Most of the time, it's about the money, but I think sometimes players just want to get paid what they're worth for braggadocious reasons, right? Or just like, again, putting themselves. Again, I don't want to bring it up too much because I don't like this energy. I don't like it being talked about to the public, right? But remember when Elliot Friedman, again, man, this guy, one of the darkest guys in hockey media, but also one of the best as well. But he asked Elias Pettersson, right? And I can't believe this did not get picked up a lot, but pretty much asked Pedersen if it was important for him to get paid more or be on par with William Nylander, right? And Pedersen answered it, which I wish he didn't. I don't know where the Canucks PR was here, okay? Come on, say these things on the low, you know what I'm saying? Or when you're at the bar with your friends. But I think that type of energy does resonate with other professional athletes or just other people who are professionals in their career. Like, yeah, it's about the money, but a lot of it also is just, again, being paid your worth, because that matters for you as an individual, an entrepreneur, a guy who's been training their whole life to do this. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, though, I look at some of these comments and I love the comments, man. Kurt Richardson really bringing it. And I feel like this energy is in a lot of places as well. But in Alvin, we trust, right? Smart Management Group. They got this. And look at Callum, man. Callum is the guy. Callum Sandu. Everyone hit the like button for Callum Sandu, okay? One of the most optimistic people in the world. He's saying that Rutherford and Alvin will not overpay passengers and the Canucks will not suck next season. Dude, to paraphrase, I'm okay with Alvin and Rutherford not overpaying. Even though it scares me because Zadorov and Lindholm and Joshua, they're impactful. You kind of want to bring some camaraderie back, all this jazz. You don't want to replay 2020 again, but we don't have Jim Benning. We have champions. And there's going to be some surprises here. And one of the surprises is, yeah, a lot of these guys, if not all of these guys they're not coming back. But the other end of that spectrum or the other end of that surprise is, holy ish, how did Alvin and Rutherford pull this off? And that's the players coming in. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, well, I 100% agree. And like I said, in this management team, we trust. And to get to one or two more comments here before we get out of here. And shout out to James Moore here in the comments talking about, we talked a lot about Lindholm and Zadorov, but Dakota Joshua part of this as well. James Moore saying Dakota Joshua disappeared versus Edmonton, losing him in free agency would be disappointing, but not the end of the world if we backfill. Look, every day, we talked about it on another episode, how you want to find the next Dakota Joshua, sure, but for next season, you need an NHL ready replacement. Like if you're chasing some AHL tweener to be the next Joshua, you should do that. You got to take these low cost bets, but for next season, you need a guy to replace him.
Yeah.
With Dakota Joshua, though, again, if he comes $4 million plus, that's probably a number the Canucks feel okay about walking away from. And in that Edmonton series, he played a lot, right? He averaged, aside from the game where he had a goal and 2 assists, he averaged over 50 minutes in every other game except for game 5 here. So again, it wasn't the best series for Dakota Joshua by any means, but he's another guy too that if he does come back, whether it's in Vancouver or someone else, I think he's learned something from these playoffs and will be a better player down the road.
He'll be a better player
if he's put in a position to succeed. But doesn't have Connor Garland by his wing. Maybe that's a different story because he does need a playmaker on his line as well.
He needs that to be like a force offensively, because I feel as if a lot of players who are forces offensively or just good offensively have a guy that they're playing with that also brings the same thing to the table. But like for me, it's with Dakota Joshua, if they bring him back and they might overpay him, blah, 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 maybe there'll be some scrutiny. But I look back at moments like game 3 against Edmonton, first shift of the game, absolutely blows up Matthias Ekholm. First shift of the game, sets the tone. You know what I'm saying? And look what the Canucks did in that first period. Like, dude, going into game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals this season, who was the league leader in hits? Dakota Joshua. So there is a good player there. Like, can you replace him with these other guys? Like Trevor brought it up in an episode a couple weeks ago. Actually, we were both on that episode. Go check it out in the feed. Yeah, sure. You theoretically could, but I'm on that wagon too. Like I think Joshua is actually a pretty good player. We may see this guy do the exact same thing next season for a different team, and yeah, it's tough, but it is what it is, man. It goes back to another comment that what's his name? John Moore? Was that his name? James Moore, my bad. James Moore, okay? Look at what he says right here, okay? So, yeah, Joshua, Zadorov, guys might go, but ultimately, your version of the Vancouver Canucks, they're going wherever Pedersen takes them. Not only is he one of the best players on this team, he's also the highest paid player on this team by far and away. Okay, for real. It's just the truth. And as James Moore says right here, he shit the bed, a.k.a. couldn't play through tendonitis, couldn't play through his injury, couldn't overcome the mental hurdle, which was, again, being injured. And he couldn't find fluidity. He couldn't find intuition because the injury was in his mind. And again, going back to the top of this episode, Rick Tocchet bringing it up, not connecting with Pedersen, but I find it curious or really, really interesting how one of the stories he would tell the boys going into next season would be, again, I broke my jaw because Mario Lemieux took a slap shot to my face and I came back in that game because I really, really wanted to. I wasn't scared of getting injured more. I wasn't fearful that this injury would be in my mind. I want to go back out there because I want to help this team win, and I'm going to help this team win, injured or not. That's the next phase of your Vancouver Canucks, and more specifically, like that's what Pettersson has to do going forward. Like not let anything get into his mind. Straight up.
Yep, there's a big mental side of hockey for sure.
Mm-hmm.
A couple more comments before we get out of here. Did you guys, Callum Sadu say, did you guys see the throw of Joshua's younger brother? Yes, Jagger Joshua. Another great name. Did play the AHL last season. His points per game clipped up. He's put a half point a game gun in the AHL, and he is a free agent. Ryan Hernandez, one of the most optimistic Canuck fans behind Callum Sandu, saying, I hope we replace Zadorov with some real D-men because re-signing Myers, we're going to have the same old chaos draft player. The reason Myers played better is because he played less. Yes, I mean, Callum, I've said this every day is no. Re-signing Myers should be like the 5th, 6th, 7th priority on this team.
Yeah.
Don't be re-signing this guy. I don't really want to see them re-sign Myers before they re-sign anybody else. Okay, like let's figure out this team first. Myers should be an afterthought, and if he walks, he walks. It's not the end of the world there.
Yeah.
And finally, Power Kino saying, "Is Mikheyev gone yet?" He is not gone, but is that the Tampa Bay Lightning in your logo? Let's trade him to the Lightning. I can see him being a Tampa Bay Lightning player. Why not?
Wait a minute. Put him on LTIR, man. Make it happen, bro. Francesco, do your work, bro. Do your work. We've been wrecked by cap penalties throughout the last effing 10 years. All this jazz. We just got off the Luongo stuff. Bro, there has to be a way for one of the best markets in the NHL, right? An organization that helped save the Arizona Coyotes year in and year out because of playoff revenue and all this jazz. Let these guys put Mikheyev on the LTIR and don't even blink an eye. We deserve it. Anyways, Beggsy, sign us out. Kyle Bound, Trevor Beggs. Hit the like button. Subscribe to the show if you're new. You're Canucks every day, no matter what. Go Canucks, go. And and Alvina Rutherford and Rick Tocchet, again, those are the guys we trust. They're the leaders on this team, and they got the sauce, man. I'm not concerned.
They got the sauce, just like you, Kyle Bowen. Shout out to the everydayers, the occasionals. There's the first-time listeners, the new subscribers, and those of you who join us on the live show on YouTube. We love each and every one of you, wherever you're listening, whenever you're listening. More episodes to come. We are still full-time, baby. Don't matter that the Canucks are out, and every other team except for 2 are out. And they'll probably be the Stanley Cup awarded this week as well. We got you covered, okay? Every day leading up to the draft and free agency. More draft free agency talk upcoming here on the network. But for now, we got to get out of here. I'm Trevor Beggs. That guy's Kyle Bowen. And you've been listening to Locked on Canucks.
Go Panthers, go. Peace, 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 peace.
You're Locked on Canucks, your daily podcast on the Vancouver Canucks. Part of